There is some thinking, in Silicon Valley that you need a Jackie Robinson in tech to break out and become a unicorn. Noted venture capitalist Ben Horowitz, he seems to buy into the theory that white folks and institutions will suddenly change once they see the first black unicorn, and then greed will take over and overcome a lot of the systemic biases and racism in tech in Silicon Valley. Do you buy into that theory?
I think Silicon Valley has a serious problem with culture, independent of the Jackie Robinson phenomenon, right? I think if we had 3, 4, 5 Jackie Robinsons today, Silicon Valley might have the same exact problems that it has. I think geography plays a huge role in this challenge. What I love to see, and we're starting to see this now in Miami, is venture capital funds being raised and then invested in Miami startups, where you can go do the whole cycle here in the city. One, it goes back to our points about trust, but two, because Miami's so diverse, you find that the venture capital community in Miami is also more diverse than Silicon Valley. And if we had an equal number of venture capital firms in Miami, I would almost guarantee they'd have better returns and better representation. Silicon Valley's problem is much deeper than a single successful startup. I think my politics, I'd say, I consider myself like a conservative Democrat, for instance. And so for me, there are very few government prescriptions for the problem. Probably more ways they can get in the way than solve it. But for businesses, there's actually a lot of things they can do. I'd like to see folks like Intel Capital, for instance. They have a diversity fund, but the rules they apply to that fund are so difficult that folks can't get through down that funnel, right? So they look for business, someone in the business group, to sign off on a product or service first. Then you go through an entire venture capital process, a process nearly impossible for firms of color or otherwise to get through.
I will challenge you on your answer in respect to the government, where, as you know, 30% or more of VC funding comes from university endowments.
Oh, but pension funds.
Pension funds.
Yeah.
As you know, the investors at the endowment level, right, they're not taxing the endowment on their investment returns or VC returns. State governments obviously investing public pension money into venture capital system. This area doesn't get a lot of coverage, but don't you think something could be done at the state and federal level to help kind of solve this big problem?
That makes perfect sense. Particularly for public pension funds, and fund of funds, which are kind of a big group here, where pensions will invest in what we call fund to fund, and that fund will then invest in multiple venture capital firms under a thesis. They can still have diversity requirements. And I don't think that's out of line or out of step, particularly because the money comes from these diverse pools of candidates that live in those cities and those states.